Okay. This Hungarian Grand Prix is going to be really interesting. You just want me to talk about Daniel Ricciardo, don't you? All right, okay. Better let these stamps then. So yeah, Daniel Ricciardo is now back on the grid, driving for Alphatauri. Now, many people are going to be expecting him to absolutely walk into Formula One with his trademark smile and his Aussie wit and his honey badger tenacity, but let's be real here. That Alphatauri AT04 is not really a points-worthy car. Yuki Tsunoda has done his best to try and score at least a couple of points. He probably would have done a little bit better had Red Bull not been around. Check out that video up top if Red Bull weren't in this season. That could be pretty interesting. But the point is that people are going to be expecting Daniel to walk in and score points on debut, and I am going to be predicting that he will not do that. He'll be very lucky to at least score maybe 1 point, unless there's a lot of chicanery going on and there's loads of accidents. We get a case of bowling happening like we did in 2021 when half the grid got taken out in some way. Because if he does bungle it up now and Spa's not that much better, we're going to be having 6 weeks of the media going, oh, was it too soon for Daniel Ricciardo to return? Oh, maybe Nyck de Vries was treated too harshly. It's going to be a headache for the Red Bull PR team, let's just say that. I hope for the best for him, and I hope that he is able to actually get some results, and who knows what may happen with Red Bull this year, but what we do know is going to happen is that Yuki Tsunoda has really got to step up his game, because otherwise we're going to see the rookie Yuki Tsunoda, and I really worry about his future career, but okay, that's done now. Are we really done with Red Bull? Because they've got upgrades coming. They are going to be bringing in some new sidepods. We don't quite know what they're going to look like yet. If I do find out in editing, I will show you on screen. But either way, doesn't really matter. They're going to be actually maybe 0.2 faster than they were at Silverstone. And it got very close with McLaren. But now everyone's just going to be seeing very little of Max Verstappen again, and he's just going to be even faster. It's going to be an utter domination. I mean, of course, Max Verstappen's going to win, and possibly this could be Red Bull's 12th consecutive win, and that will actually finally beat the long-lasting record of McLaren's of 11 wins during the 1988 season, and that's a pretty big deal. Their next record would be to try and at least win 94% of all of the race events, so they need to effectively win every single race this season. I think that at least one of them will be won by somebody else, but I'm too nervous to actually do so, because unless Max has a problem, he's guaranteed to win, because he's just... I mean, I'm not a fan of the guy, but you gotta marvel his skill. Well, who's gonna be the runner-up team then? Well, okay, I'm just gonna don my McLaren hat for a moment, because I really want McLaren to be the second fastest team, because let's be real here, Silverstone was amazing, and that was probably the biggest shot in the arm that I needed to actually keep the hope that McLaren can actually salvage something and maybe at least get 5th place in the Constructors. They've got one more set of upgrades coming, and then they'll probably have maybe one more later in the year. Both cars are going to have the upgrades now, so we're now going to see Oscar with that new front wing, as well as apparently some mechanical upgrades that might hopefully help their race pace, because even though they did really well in Silverstone, there's not a guarantee they might do well here, because that car is pretty draggy, that McLaren, and unless they've been able to sort that out with mechanical grip, then maybe I could think that the end of Sector 3 and the start of Sector 1, so basically where the DRS zones are, McLaren might be struggling a little bit, and then maybe Williams might be able to capitalize on it, but even then, we don't really know. It's meant to be a high downforce circuit, and apparently the McLaren is a demon in the high-speed corners like we saw in Maggots and Beckett's, but even then, there's not a guarantee that it actually might be effective, because Sector 2, that wibbly-wobbly bit at the back, little bit uncertain, but hey, Oscar Piastri though, I think he could get some points at least, and I want to be bullish here because with all of those upgrades all at once, McLaren's got to at least be in contention for a podium, maybe not second place, maybe in the line for third, but it all depends on, of course, what happens with Checo's qualifying. And now with Daniel there, oh, everyone's just going to have all eyes on Checo, because if he misses out of Q2, late breaking news here, I've just seen these pictures from Formula Uno. They have now got the RB19 sidepods featuring mini cooling ventless. Look at that size of that thing. It's almost like it's squinting. It's like, oh, what's that? What are those people in the distance? Oh, those are the opponents. I think they're opponents, or are they in a different formula? Oh, God. They're innovating too fast, but McLaren, I hope you can at least be within touching distance, yeah? All right, I'll take that off now. But the rest of the teams, there's Aston Martin, there's Alpine, there are Mercedes, Ferrari. You got all of these teams vying for second place. No one's quite sure who's going to be good at what, but Mercedes, I think they might actually be fairly good here. And Lewis Hamilton's won here loads and loads of times. In fact, he actually scored his first win for Mercedes at this track. And then, of course, that 2021 meme of him just being the only one on the grid. I mean, come on, that's kind of funny. I think he's going to be very good here, and I think he could be in with a shout of maybe getting second place, because you can't deny that he knows his way around the track here, and so long as there's not the scary Fernando Alonso in the way, then he's good. Aston Martin, well, Fernando Alonso did say that this was a track to watch out for Aston Martin, but any upgrades they might have, is that enough with all of the other ones and all the other teams that have upgraded? I think that might have been an out-of-date statement or something like that, but here's hoping. He's very fiery. Whenever Fernando comes out spitting lyrics and stuff like that, he actually ends up being mostly right. Remember that time in Monaco? He was right. I don't think we can expect heroics from Williams this time out, and even Albon's saying that you got to limit your expectations, folks. He reckons that points aren't particularly likely this time out. Oh, by the way, this is all rumour here. Helmut Marko did approach Alex Albon with the possibility of him returning post-2025, which is when his contract at Williams ends up, and Albon apparently rejected it. Good on you, Alex. That's a really good idea. You got burnt by them. Don't go back to them. It's like they're going, Alex, baby, please take us back. And Alex is like, no, I've moved on. James is my beau now. Oh, he loves me so hard. I mean, sorry if I'm being a bit theatrical, but I'm just so happy that Alex is actually staying put. Good. Good job. Williams is in good hands here. But one thing that was going to be happening earlier in the season is now actually coming back round again. We were meant to be having this at the Imola Grand Prix, but obviously that got rained out and they wouldn't have been able to do much because it's meant to be a dry tyre experiment, really. We are going to be having solid compounds for certain qualifying sessions, kind of like what we get in the sprint shootout, where you have to use a specific set of tyres. So in Q1, everyone has to use hard tyres, then in Q2 you have to use mediums, then in Q3 you have to use softs. But what makes this even more spicy is that the amount of sets that all the teams have to use throughout the entire weekend has been reduced from 13 to 11. So it's all about maybe trying to boost strategy or try and be more efficient so you're not using as many tyres, being in preparation for when you get rid of tyre blankets next year. But I don't know, this could be interesting, but we might get into a situation where if teams have actually gone through all of their tyres during practice, you might not actually have tyres that are new for particular sessions. So if you've used up all your medium tyres during long race runs in P1, P2, P3, then you might not have anything new to use and you might be a bit handicapped when you get to Q2, for example. Or if any teams are not likely to get past Q1, they could just set up their cars to be ideal for hard tyres and then go from there, go long in the race. That might be a little bit of a surprise. However, this could go badly for any teams that tends to munch through their tyres, like Ferrari or Haas, for example, and even the likes of my boys McLaren, because they do turn on their tyres quite quickly. And if they're not careful with their setup, or if their upgrades for this time out don't work, because, 3 out of 3, that's a little bit unlikely for them all to work immediately out of the box, then I think McLaren could slip here. But Ferrari and Haas, they munch through their tyres and they're going to have less of them. That's going to be very, very nervous. This is why I'm not really rating Ferrari too high at this race. I'm really thinking they might struggle here. But then again, it could mean that all of the sets are used over the weekend. And if you have a fresh set of tyres going into the race itself, you are going to have a major advantage there. People are going to be much more careful when it comes to their runs. They're going to really try and preserve them. So I wouldn't be surprised that in practice, we don't see as many teams out there. I think it might be a little bit quiet. But okay. Let's get into the predictions. So for my top 5, I already mentioned it earlier, but Max Verstappen, he's going to win this, of course, because with those tiny little cooling vents and all of those little upgrades from what Adrian Newey has seen throughout the rest of the paddock, because everyone's been trying to catch up, and now Red Bull's gone like, yeah, okay, we're going to try now. And I think Max is now going to just completely romp home. There's no real trying to challenge him, unless he has a problem with all of those upgrades or something breaks in the car, because, we are getting to the halfway point of the season and things do tend to break. So if you did get a 100 power unit giving up the ghost or something like that, then that's the only way I can see Max Verstappen not winning a race, is if the car lets him down. He won't let himself down because he's just on autopilot right now. But Hamilton, I think, is the most likely person to maybe give him some kind of a challenge in second place, because Hungary, again, is one of his best tracks. He is really good around here, and if he is unopposed by any other driver and he actually gets a good grid slot, I could easily see him in second place for the race itself. Now, third place, I want to say Lando Norris, because he is on fire right now. He is able to make that car work, and he kept within 3.5 seconds of Max Verstappen, but of course this was the pre-upgraded Red Bull, but he was able to hold his own against Max. He does know Max very well, and might be able to keep up relatively well, but I think Lewis might have the measure of him at this circuit, because I don't remember Lando doing that well at this track. But I do have high hopes with that upgraded McLaren, the last of the 3 big upgrades. Now that the McLaren is actually effectively caught up with everyone else, this definitely could be a chance for a podium, but I think it's a very slim chance, but I'm going to call it anyway, because you know me. I think Fernando might actually be frustrated by a very tenacious Lando Norris, who can make that car work. He can run it on the ragged edge, and even though he does like to talk about the car being terrible, he does struggle a lot, he can still do the business. And I think Fernando might not have enough pace to go for a podium at this particular race, unless of course he does really well in qualifying. But I still feel like a solid 4th is very, very certain. Very, very likely for the guy. And then 5th place, Checo. I have predicted Checo to be on the podium or close to it several times, and all of these qualifying snafus, I can't predict him any higher because he's not really proven to me that he can actually qualify well, and that he won't have to rely on a burn from the stern campaign of starting in like 15th or 16th and then having to maybe get up to 6th if he's lucky. If he can get 3rd, then of course it's going to be a Red Bull 1-2. But for the moment, I really can't reliably predict that right now, so he has got to be in 5th place. I'm sorry, I can't rate him any higher, unless Daniel's presence is enough to actually stoke the fire and he can actually do something. But I'd rather Red Bull not actually use the stick to try and cajole their drivers into doing better. I'd rather do it in a way that's a little bit more, conducive to a happy frame of mind. But I hope that you're happy with all of this right now, and I really want to see what happens here, because I think Formula One, I think it's now got its spark back with, of course, that honey badger back in the frame. But I hope he actually can live up to all of that hype, because if he doesn't, oh dear, oh dear.